Hi everybody, welcome
Hi
back
there.
to Live Thoughts. We're getting close to Easter, Ruth.
Yes.
It's we're recording this on a Thursday morning,
hmm
and we're pretty excited about the whole Easter week. It's always wonderful. Did you like Easter when you were a kid? I know it was mostly when you were a kid. It's
Well,
mostly about
do
Easter
you know what I
eggs.
remember mostly? This is terrible, but I remember mostly that everybody was so, when I was a wee girl in Ireland, like people were so focused on what you wore.
Oh
You had
gosh,
an
yeah.
Easter dress, you had to
hmm
have an Easter dress and matching shoes. And if you didn't have just the right, I don't know, the right dress on, people would look at you funny, or they would maybe look at your mother like, why are you dressing your
Yeah.
child like that?
Do you remember in the big Presbyterian churches,
Yeah.
which is more like
That's
a little bit more like the state
Yeah,
church in
what
Ireland. It's all
I
very
grew
prim
up
and
in.
proper, and everybody was showing off their new hats.
hmm
Some people had massive hats on,
hmm
and fancy hats, tall hats, and
And anybody who knows me knows that I'm like a casual dresser. I do not like to be
you're
dressed
casual?
up. Yes.
Really?
Yes, sir. And you know that. You've been married to me
Okay.
for 43 years. But, dressing up and sitting right and doing all that. So, but anyway, isn't that awful that that's my memory of church
Yeah.
when I was a kid at Easter? It
Yeah.
was a pain.
And mine was just the Easter eggs. You focused on Easter eggs and forget all about the real reason for Easter. It's kind of similar to how kids approach Christmas, right?
Mhm. What Santa's bringing.
Yeah, what Santa bringing. Somehow if we switch these holidays and secularize them so much that not everybody, so many people have forgot the real meaning behind them all, why we have them in the first place.
I know.
Easter, we're celebrating Jesus' victory over death,
And
not
sin.
not a bunch of chocolate buttons inside a chocolate Terry's egg.
No, I know.
So.
And this Friday's Good Friday.
Yes.
And we'll be remembering that with some prayer and meditation and nice singing.
Yeah.
And then, but last week you were talking about Jesus coming in on a donkey. And how shocked everybody was to start off with. And then second of all, they kind of thought, well, at least he's coming in to save us from these Romans, so that's good. And they had completely misunderstood who Jesus is and was and what he was here to do.
Yeah.
So the Romans were the least of our worries, and they didn't know that.
Yeah. Yeah, they really, they looked at Jesus and thought, I mean, I guess in the natural, you think about this. Here's a person in their mind. He can control the oceans. He control the skies. He controls, well, not just nature, but what happens in a person's body. He can make blind people see. He can turn water into wine. And they thought, oh my gosh, if he can just now turn not just water into wine, but turn all this power on the Romans, we're on to a winner. And they cried out, save us now. I mean, they were crying out something that was actually going to be true.
But they didn't realize.
They didn't know it was going to be true. It was going to be true because
they thought the Romans were their big issue, which they were. They're incredibly oppressive and cruel. But that was only this much of the problem.
Right.
When Jesus was dealing with the whole problem forever.
And it just shows that this is actually part of all of our lives. Sometimes our expectations are very different from God's purposes. So we talked about how, when things go wrong in our lives, and we looked at Joseph for a little bit there too and said, when he was sold as a slave and he was imprisoned and he was accused of rape and everything seemed to just totally go wrong in his life. And he could have thought, what on earth? God said I was going to be a leader, and now look at me. People hate me, and I've been accused and forgotten about in prison. And all the time, God's working out his purposes because he's going to use him to save an entire nation from starvation, as well as his own family. But he didn't know it at the time. No. All he could see, I'm sure, as he was looking out through the bars many days, is what is going on.
I know. And we don't see more than we can as humans, right? So we can pray and ask God to help. And we ask this way because that's what we see. And Lord, if you could just do this and this and this and fix this. And then if God doesn't answer exactly that way, we think God's not listening. But in actual fact, God has listened and he's answering the whole picture.
Right.
Not just the wee tiny bit we're talking
Yeah.
about.
So,
even though those little bits can be really hurtful for
yeah.
us. Yeah.
So the thing is, God does have a plan
Mm-hmm.
for our lives, for
Mhm.
your life. And it sometimes looks like things aren't working out for you, or you don't understand why you're going through such terrible times. But it could be that God is actually guiding your footsteps. And sometimes we go through troubled water, but he brings us through.
Mm-hmm.
And at some point, you're able to see why things happened the way they did.
Mm-hmm.
Because God's maneuvering things
Mhm.
in the world,
Mm-hmm.
and is maneuvering people and situations to get us where he wants us to be.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes it's unfortunate, but sometimes it's the hard things that happen to us that get us to where we're supposed to be, because if they didn't happen, we would be off in a different direction.
And we might never see a full answer to what we thought we were praying for in our lifetime, because God's dealing with the bigger picture,
Eternity,
the whole thing.
a very long time.
Yeah, he's dealing with eternal implications for everything.
Yeah.
And so we need to remember that and keep our faith in him and keep strong and follow him, even though this life does get very hard sometimes.
Right. Yeah.
But keep trusting the Lord.
Amen. Well, God bless you. Good spending time with you. We'll see you next week. And if you're around, come to our Good Friday service at 6 o'clock on Friday. It's going to be a wonderful service we've got planned. And then obviously we're celebrating Easter Sunday. We do have a breakfast at church
at 9:30.
At 9:30 for
the church
everyone.
At 10:30.
So yeah, it's going to be great. Well, God bless you. We'll see you soon.
Bye.